Hi students, in this video we will be going over simplifying and evaluating expressions. Our essential question for today is, how are expressions with multiple variables simplified and evaluated? So once again, how are expressions with multiple variables simplified and evaluated? So first let's go over simplifying expressions and how we basically simplify algebraic expressions. So the first step for this is we got to think about what's called combining like terms. And when we combine like terms, we are looking at an expression, an algebraic expression that looks something like this. And each term, like we talked about last time, is everything that is basically the term and then the sign in front of it. So for instance, we've got 4x is a term, negative 6y is a term, negative 3x is a term, 2y is a term, and so is 8. So these are all terms. And the best way to do it is to separate all of them. So you take your original problem and then draw those lines. They're kind of like we did last time to separate all those terms. So separate all those terms out. And the only things that can be combined are like terms. So x's can be combined with x's, y's with y's, and constants with constants. And so the next step says to either color, underline, or highlight like terms. So in this case, I just wrote them in different colors. Now, as you go on throughout this year, you won't need to do this process, but I think this is really helpful right now to be able to understand what terms are alike and which ones are not. And so the best way to do this is to separate those terms by drawing those lines and then to either highlight, underline, or something that shows you which terms go with which other terms. Now, the next thing that we want to do is combine the like variables. So for instance, combine the x's with the x's, the y's with the y's, and then the constants with the constants. And pretty much once you separate the terms, basically, you're just using the rules for adding integers. So 4x plus a negative 3x is just x. Negative 6y plus 2y is a negative 4y. And 8 has nothing to be combined with, so it just stays 8. So our answer ends up looking like this. Again, 4x minus 3x is x. Negative 6y plus 2y is negative 4y. And 8 stays 8. So it's actually a pretty easy concept. So let's look at a couple more examples. So the first example we have here has not only x's but x squareds and x cubes. So it's got several exponents here. And when we separate these, again, basically there are like terms and even the x's can be different. So x squareds are different from x cubes and regular x's are different from all the rest as well. So again, x squareds can only be combined with x squareds, and x cubed with x cubes, and then regular x's with just other x's. So in this case, we also want to write it from largest exponent to smallest exponent. So the first thing we would want to write down is going to be our answers that have the cubed in it. And since that's alone, we know we're left with 2x cubed eventually. Then after that, I'll want to write in the squareds, because that's the next highest exponents. And then finally just the x's. And here we just follow those rules for adding integers. Okay, so 3x plus a negative 6x is going to give us a negative 3x squared, and 4x minus 2x is 2x. So as you can see, this 2x cubed was just brought down. It had nothing to be combined with. 3x minus 6x squared is a negative 3x squared, and 4x minus 2x is just 2x. Alright, now let's look at an even more complicated one. This time, we've got terms that have a and b in it, but then some of the a's have a squareds, and some of the b's have b squareds. So again, they're like terms basically based upon their variables being identical. So for instance, the these ab's match up, so those are like terms. We've got the a squared and b, those match up. And then we've got this 5ab to the second, so 5ab squared, and that one's all on its own because there's no other terms that match that. So again, we just combine the like terms and we put in the order from the highest exponents to the lowest exponents. Now the highest exponents are going to be the ones that you see first. So I see an a to the second here and here, so that's going to be the first term we write. After that, we've got this one, the 5ab squared. That's going to be the next term we write. And then finally, the last terms that we're going to write are going to be those ab's that are all by itself. Okay, so we're just going to combine those together. And 2 plus 3a is going to be 5a. And I actually did kind of put it out of order. I should have put it the other direction, but that's okay. So once we combine those, these combine down to be negative 2ab. This one stays by itself since there's nothing else to be combined with, and 2a squared b plus 3a squared b is 5a squared b. Sorry. So it's a pretty easy concept. And I'll be very specific in homework or in the quiz on which order you should write it in as well. All right, now let's look at one that's kind of a word type problem. And this one says find the perimeter of the triangle. Now if you remember, the perimeter is the sum of all the sides. Basically, it's the distance of all the edges together. Okay, so it's the distance of all of the edges. So it's this plus that. So basically, all you're doing is finding the sum of all of the sides of the triangle. So to find the perimeter, you're just finding the sum of all the sides of the triangle. And all I do then is I take all three of those expressions and I'm going to add them together. And I like to put them in parentheses first because I think sometimes, although this one is all addition, there are going to be a couple problems on your homework that aren't completely addition and might have some subtraction in it. And it's very important that you make sure that the sign that is connecting them is distributed into the terms inside those parentheses. Now in this case with addition connecting them, we know that this 5x is going to stay a positive, this one will stay a negative. Basically, addition doesn't change it at all. So we can actually drop all the parentheses and make it a gigantically huge problem like this. But again, we just combine all the like terms, and eventually it just goes, okay, 2x plus 5x plus 3x is 10x, and negative 6 plus negative 10 plus 4 will give us a negative 12. So although that seems like a really weird answer, your final answer is still an expression. Okay, so the perimeter of the triangle would be 10x minus 12. So it seems weird, and it seems confusing, but it's actually very simple. All right, now let's look at some problems where we evaluate expressions. Now this is where you are actually using order of operations to find a number when you're basically having expressions like this one. And you know that the variables x, y, z are certain numbers, but we want to solve that problem using order of operations and plugging in those numbers. Now, the first thing that I always say you should do is remove the variables. So as you see in our step number 1, remove the variables from the expression and place parentheses in the place of each variable. And it looks like this. It looks really ugly, it looks really confusing, but where you see the variable, instead I want you to put parentheses. And the main reason for that is that when we plug in these numbers, when we plug in negative 2 to x and 3 to y and negative 5 to z, a lot of people will make a mistake. And I'll show you what that is right now. So as I plug those in, it looks very simple. We know that's going to be multiplication. It's going to be easy to work with. Right here, where the minus negative 5 is where a lot of people will make errors if they don't use parentheses. And that common error that I see usually is just saying, oh, it's just minus 5. But no, we got to remember it's minus a negative 5, and that's a very different thing. Because when we subtract a negative 5, eventually it becomes addition. So make sure that where you see those variables, you put parentheses first and then input those numbers for what you know those variables are to be. And then from here, we just follow order of operations. So let's multiply these first two numbers out, and we've got negative 8 plus 15. And right here you can see, I know that subtracting a negative just becomes addition. And then I rewrote the rest of the equation. Negative 8 plus 15 is 7. Rewrite the rest of the equation. 7 plus 5 is 12. And 12 plus 10 is 22. So it's a pretty easy problem, but it's very important that you put those parentheses in first. Now let's go over 2 more examples just in case. So first one, and this one has an exponent in it. Again, take out those variables and put in parentheses. Now you can see originally I didn't have the brackets there, but since I was going to put parentheses where the variables were, it made more sense to create brackets so that I could kind of separate the parentheses from each other. And now I'm just going to plug in those numbers. I know that x is -2, y is 3, z is -5. So I just put all those numbers in. Now -2 to the second power is -2 times -2. And so that is +4. Oops, and so that one's actually a little bit off on this answer. Let's kind of scratch that out. So it's going to be a +4 minus 3. And I'm going to rewrite out the rest of this answer because I know it's going to be wrong in a second. So 4 minus 3 is 1 times the -5. Sorry, my little pen here isn't so good. Plus 4. I know, it looks terrible, right? All right. And 1 times the -5 then would be -5. Plus 4 is going to give us a -1. A -1. There we go. Whew. Okay. So then as you can see, you're just following those rules of order of operations. I know, and then these answers are going to be totally off right now, but that's okay. All right, so example number 2, and let's hope that one goes well. We're going to, again, take out those variables and put in parentheses. Okay, so now I'm going to just input all those numbers where the variables used to be and follow order of operations. So over here I see I've got multiplication first, so -2 times -5 is a +10. And right here you can also see that I saw that I was subtracting a negative, which becomes just adding. And 10 divided by 2 is 5. And when I add all of these together, I get 13. So it's actually a pretty easy process, especially if you're pretty comfortable with order of operations. This shouldn't be a problem. The most important thing is that you make sure that when you're evaluating expressions, you put in those parentheses first. So now you've got about 4 practice problems to go through. Take some time, go through those practice problems, input your answers to Edpuzzle, and we will review these tomorrow if you have any trouble with them. If you have any questions, let me know.